Welcome to Big Homeopathy. I'm your host, Sarah Thompson. Hi, welcome to Big Homeopathy. I'm your host, Big Homeopath, Sarah Thompson. Today's post is not about the practice of professional homeopathy, and it's not about the research that supports it, but it is about the principle of similars. True healing comes from being in contact with something that vibrates at the same frequency as our suffering. Intuitively, we know this. We seek out a sad movie or the blues. Many conventional medications are substances that are similar, that cause a similar effect to the disease manifestation that is either present or that someone is trying to prevent. Antibiotics are made of molds. Chemotherapy and radiation are carcinogenic. Vaccines are attenuated bacteria and viruses of diseases that the prescriber is hoping to avoid. I can't know what it is that someone finds in the Amazon or between the lines of a poem that heals them. I can't know what it is in the arrangement of certain frequencies that make sounds that can bring a person to joy or to tears. But it's real and it's true, and I can see the effects of it. This is true of grief. In order to heal from grief, we go and spend time with the memory of the person from whom we've been separated. Today's post is a eulogy. My dear friend Willits Ansell died last week at the age of 90. That's a pretty good run, but I wasn't ready. Will was one of the most vital people I have ever met, so totally in harmony with the rhythms of his life that I believe he must have known in the moment when he called the ambulance that it would arrive, pulled by 6 white horses. When I sat down a few days later to hold his spirit in attunement for the journey, it was like water in my hands or 1,000 threads of silk. It was completely integrated into the divine current seamlessly. The day before he died, he'd stopped to tell me that there would be a show of his works at a local gallery. Now it will be a memorial. In his last years, he had been painting, mostly, having run out of room to build more boats or cabins on sacred spaces around the wooded grove of his home. Endlessly productive. He'd run out of space for his paintings, too, and started building stands to get them up off the floor. A writer, he'd been in the middle of an unfinished history of the oar. That elemental tool, from the first crude extension of an arm to the carbon fiber blade of an Olympic crew, built for plying the interstice of sky and water that was Will's habitat and home, was a fitting muse for such a man, and it was just as natural that he would discover, to the frustration of his research, that few had thought the lowly oar worthy of recording in sufficient detail before. Will could see the whole world in the works of the hand that are made in the service of the works of nature. At the helm of a boat he had built, he was the wisest, truest, oldest man of the sea. Once on a delivery of a lobster yacht to Maryland during a sullen October off the coasts of Cape Ann or Cod or one of those types of places where such things happen, a fisherman motored over suspiciously. "That's a new boat," he declared accusingly, as if Will were an impostor for comprising such an authentic picture in any vessel that contained a GPS. He was probably navigating it with a sextant and dead reckoning anyway. From my yard, I'd hear the sound of his hammer on the rivets of a dory. I'd wander over and he'd show me the sauna he'd just built or invite me to split a beer and a can of sardines while Mozart played on a cassette. There was no end to the magic of his landscape, and I can hardly bear the thought of seeing his yawl Abbey safely hauled on the dock of the shop rather than riding at her mooring down the cove. Here are a few photos from his studio and some of his works from private collections, mine and others. Goodbye, Will. You've slipped your earthly moorings and skipped over the foam to realms beyond. I see you in the sea and wood, and all you leave behind that's good. That's big homeopathy this week. It's going to be huge. I'll see you next week.